There is no connection between the mob and the music business.
At all?
I don't believe so.
You were indicted yesterday on 3 of the 117 counts. The indictment says essentially that you and a New Jersey mafia figure, Corky Vastola, arranged to have somebody beat up because they owed more than $1 million to the big record company MCA. What about these charges?
They're not true.
Hello VC, I am doing a video response for Miko's 2,000 subscribers contest. And Miko, if you're watching this, you don't have to enter me in. I'm just happy to do a response. I actually have the prize that you're offering. I know you said that you can work out something different, but don't worry about it. First of all, congrats on the subs. You have a new child on the way, and you're soon to get very busy, as you know all too well because you already have a couple of children yourself. But to get into it, as you can tell from my intro, there's one label I'm going to cover, but I'm not going to start out with that label. Now, you took one of the cooler ones from your intro video, which is the Vertigo Swirl, which I love myself, so I couldn't do the same one that you featured. But since there's only been a couple of video replies to date, I thought I would cover Swan Song, so by Led Zeppelin. So I think everyone is familiar with this because this type of iconography is so related to the band's image. I personally had a banner in college with this icon, which I thought was the coolest. This label, they didn't really put this into fruition until their album Physical Graffiti, but Physical Graffiti was not going to be the first release that featured that particular label and logo. It was actually Maggie Bell, but unfortunately the band didn't have their act together in time for Maggie Bell's first release, so they released it under the Atlantic label, which is, you know, what Swan Song is underneath. Now, Swan Song has issued multiple bands under that banner, Bad Company being one of the bigger ones. Vance at VK Lounge, I think he's been off collecting all the artists that were issued on that label, which is actually a pretty cool thing. But I just wanted to put out Swan Song. The image from the album actually comes from a painting by William Rimmer, and the painting is of Apollo the sun god, and the title of the painting is called Evening Fall of Day. And if you go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, I think you can see that painting on display. I personally have never been to Boston, but maybe Rob Pennix can comment if he's seen it in person. So, moving on with some of the bigger iconic labels. So, as you can tell from my intro, I wanted to talk a little bit about Roulette Records. So, Roulette started out in 1956. There were 4 individuals that founded the label. The most infamous is also the label's president, which is Morris or Mo Levy. And the label was known for its connection to the mafia. And Mr. Levy was indicted in the 80s. Tommy Shondell actually, in his autobiography, wrote about it, and I'm going to end this video with a short little segment of him talking about it. But Roulette was also on the jazz scene as well, and Mo Levy actually owned Birdland, the infamous jazz club in New York. And many of the albums that were put out were live albums from Birdland. But to take a look at the label in particular, they started out in '56 with this particular label, and it was kind of cool because it had the ball. And then up till 1963 they worked a change, and the change was only good for about 6 months. They went with the split image. I unfortunately do not have an original pressing with this particular label, but when they got to late '63 they changed the image again. This is just another record I just happened to grab, which I need to clean up. That's on the label by Count Basie. They changed the image on the label to look more like an actual roulette wheel, and they stuck with that until the label itself started to flounder in the '70s, and Mr. Mo Levy got in a little more trouble. Mo Levy is also famous for a couple other things. So he was a founder of Sugar Hill Records, which is big on the rap scene. He also had a little bit of a high-profile lawsuit going with John Lennon. So John Lennon used some of the lyrics from a Chuck Berry tune for "Come Together." Mo Levy owned the publishing rights for that Chuck Berry song and sued John Lennon. They settled out of court. John Lennon agreed to record 3 songs on his rock and roll album for Mr. Levy. Ultimately, that didn't happen. So Mo Levy, I think he got 3 of the tracks, 3 or 4 of the basic tracks, and then he issued an album, which was mail order only. Maybe some of the Beatle fans that are on the BC have that and they could show it. I'd be curious to see it. But anyway, Mr. Levy eventually died in the '90s before he could do any jail service. So kind of an interesting tale about that particular label. But I have to say, and this is my theory, that the CD age actually kicked off the idea of the vanity label. So, you know, if you look at the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s albums, the labels were very generic to the record label itself. There wasn't any, it's not to say it's not all that way, but there wasn't any creative labels or vanity labels that went along with the album packaging. With the issuance of like a lot of the DJ techno music, they couldn't necessarily afford to do a full 12-inch art, so it was really the label that was the driver or one of the selling points. And one of the 12 inches that I like to collect is by a brand called Sleazy Beats, and so I'm always a sucker for cheesecake stuff. So Sleazy Beats is based out of the Netherlands, and they always feature a nice attractive woman on the cover, so it's kind of ambient dance electronic music, which I really like. I've talked about the group Bent on several occasions, and one of the members of Bent actually has done a series of 12 inches, and one of his 12 inches actually featured the crew, or the last crew of Columbia that perished in 2003. And I honestly think this is a nice tribute to the crew. Now, some of the coolest labels are not really labels at all. The band Justice, on one of their 12 inches, they actually had the label imprinted on the lacquer. So I don't know how well this is going to come out, but there you can kind of see it there. You can see the band's logo etched into the actual vinyl. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then just to show you some of the other cool vanity labels. Now, I don't have an original of this, and I know there are a ton of Iron Maiden fans out there, but for the reissue series, I always thought that these were kind of cool. And I think the last one I'll show, so this is going to be a little bit redundant because I showed it in my last video about the dead weather. Dodge and burn, just if you didn't catch my last video, just to show you the sound effect. And the label, which I thought was pretty cool, and when I was rewatching one of my videos, I'm like, well, hey, that would fit the contest, so that one had an X-ray on it. And it actually kind of fit well with the marble theme. So, Miko, I hope this meets your expectation for what you were looking for. Again, congrats. I agree with your comment on Robert Zett. He had some pretty cool labels, especially with the Rolling Stone with the naked guy. That, you know, maybe Robert will follow the path of Brandon and just come back. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But anyway, congrats on the subs. For everyone that's watched this video, thank you for taking the time to watch. And let's hear from Mr. Tommy James.
Got about halfway through, we realized that we were only telling about half the story. And so we had to stop dead in our tracks, and we put it on the shelf for a little bit because we knew we had to tell the, I guess you could say, the dirty side, which was the story of Roulette Records and not just the music. And Roulette was the label that we were signed to. And we had a lot of great success at Roulette. Roulette was actually a very fine functioning record company, independent record label here in New York, but they were also a front for the Genovese crime family, and lots of hanky-panky going on there. Everything from money laundering to a social club, and all the characters used to hang out there that we'd see on TV. And as a matter of fact, one of the stories we tell in the book is how we slowly came to realize what Roulette was.